continuing on with the roof renovation, second week, towards the end of the second week. Bit of interesting news as well. My neighbour, whose roof adjoins mine, he arrived from Spain. I saw a car when I came to park up, because at the moment I'm not sleeping in the house because it's still a bit of a mess. So I've got an Airbnb in a town called La Ferté-Bernard. And so when I arrived on one particular morning, I saw a car there with Spanish plates on it. I thought, aye, aye, I bet that's my neighbour. And yes, clearly it was. And it not at all what I imagined it, because the people in the town have been saying it was a property that was owned by a lady, and all the rest of it, and it was her brother that had come to do bits and pieces there, the guy that I met while I was first working at the house. In fact, it's nothing at all like that. He was quite a nice guy. He's got a Spanish wife. He's got a couple of young kids. He came with his friend as well. He was explaining that, in fact, the guy that was there, who people thought was the brother of the woman that owned it, was in fact the cousin of his wife. And he's made a right old hash of it. And he was really annoyed about the fact that he'd broken the wood burner, he'd broken the glass in the wood burner, he'd damaged the front door. Don't know how he'd managed to do that. And a few other bits and pieces. And I think he'd started a fire or something outside, and for whatever reason, he burnt some of the kids' toys that were there. So this neighbour that I've met now, he was a bit perturbed by it all. And anyway, he's come back because he received a letter from the mayor saying you need to have a bit of a tidy up in your garden. It's not acceptable, and it's a big thing in France. So, fair play to him. He's driven all the way up from Spain with his wife, with his kids. He's currently got no electricity there. He's got no water there. In fact, it's a bit bizarre because he has actually owned the property for donkey's years. It's not, again, another one of the stories was that it was somebody that bought during COVID. He'd spent the time there during COVID, but it wasn't because he'd bought it. It's because he'd already had the house. And I can't understand then why either he's had the water and electric supply cut because he's not there. But then he was asking me who supplies the water in this particular commune. Where I was in Normandy, it was a company called SAUR, S-A-U-R, who like the water company there. And I assume maybe it would be the same thing here, but it's not. It's a much smaller society that covers this part of the world. So I gave him all the details, and I said I'd met the president of the syndicate of Low, because you're not likely to meet the president of Thames Water if you're living in the UK anytime soon. So it's quite unusual to meet someone that's the head of a society in a small town. Anyway, he was inquiring about that. Apparently, he'd asked EDF, or EDF, as the British say, to connect, to give him an electrical supply. And in the meantime, he asked me if he could plug in an extension cable into my electric so he could charge his mobile phone and make a coffee, of which obviously I agreed. And I said, yeah, no problems at all. He had suggested that while he was there, him and his friend were going to cut down I'd say grass, but it isn't really grass because it's about 3 foot high. But the thing is, he's got no tools whatsoever. So him and his mate are using like a bit of wood, like a stick of wood, to hack at, a bit like a scythe to hack at the grass. To try and cut it down, and his garden's a wee bit bigger than mine. It's a lot bigger than mine, in fact. And I was like, you need a strimmer, or they say the French is débroussailleuse. And I said, you need one of those. He said, yes, I do need one of those. Have you got one? I said, I have got one, but it's in Normandy, and plus I I never lend tools. Excuse me. I never lend tools to people. I wouldn't lend them to my own brothers. I certainly don't lend them to neighbours or anybody else. So I said yes and no. I've got a deboucheuse, but you would never be able to use it. You need to think about getting one or hiring one or whatever. They're not a great deal of money. You can buy the cheap ones for 30, 40 euros, which would be sufficient for him, I'd imagine, to do this. So although he did, I suppose he did about 10, 15 minutes of that, and then he spent the rest of the afternoon in his garden playing his guitar and singing along with his children, which was quite sweet, but not overly industrious. As far as he's talking about getting the house finished or not finished, he's getting the house into some sort of order. Because he's looking to put it on the market. It seems that everybody in town is looking to sell their property at the moment, which is interesting. It's a bit of a state. He gave me a bit of a tour of it. You actually come in via, I think I've done a video where I've shown there's a door at the front of the house. Well, bizarrely enough, that door at the front house leads straight into a toilet. So we had a bit of a joke about that. And it was somebody that he'd employed to put a toilet in there, but not in that particular place. Why on earth somebody decided to put a toilet in directly as you open what I would consider to be a front door is somewhat strange. Anyway, normally they access it from the side. So you've got a side path and then you've got a door and a couple of windows there. So that's how he generally accesses the house. And you've got a very old antiquated kitchen with a wood burner in it. You've got a couple of bedrooms and a small sort of living space. And then there's a room at the back, the room at the back, which I hacked a little tiny hole into in a previous episode, which he would only ever use as what the French call a cave or basement. So he's looking to have a bit of a tidy up. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to do with it. I'm not entirely sure what he could do with it, to be honest with you. If he's not going to be looking to spend any money on it, if he's looking to just put it straight on the market, the garden's his biggest problem because it just looks like a jungle. So he needs to take care of that. And the other interesting thing was he's a really nice guy, and I said to him, look, there's a thing you get when you buy a property in France. It's called a cadastre, and it's like a plan of what you've bought. I might show a picture of it in a later video if I remember. So when I look at my cadastre, I can see clearly the outline of my property and the outline of my barn, and you can see also that the beginnings of the barn is detached, and that's my neighbours, who the guy who's going to be selling soon. But the whole rest of the barn is mine, and he'd put a fence in between my property and his, sort of claiming that part of the barn. And I asked him about it, and he went, "Oh no." He said it was overgrown when he bought it, and he'd hacked away, and he came across this building. And he thought, "Oh, that's great! I've got another building with my house." But he said, "Oh, no problem at all." He said, we can rejig the fence line, not a problem at all." I showed him. I've got a cadastre on my mobile phone. I said, "Look, here's the proof, if you like." And he said, "No problem at all." He said, "We'll rejig the fencing line." It's not something he was looking to have. He just, for whatever reason, he assumed that it was his when he bought the house. Obviously, he hadn't bothered to look at all this paperwork because he would have received the same cadastre as well, which shows you, like I say, shows you what is what. So, lots of good things happened on that day. Very nice guy. His mate was quite nice as well. His mate. His father lives in Alençon, which is only about 60, 70 kilometres north of here. The little kiddies were sweet as well. From time to time they speak in Spanish, from time to time they speak in English, not in English, in French. So it's really sweet. You can sort of hear them in the garden. So when the mother's talking, the mothers tend to talk generally in Spanish, although she does speak French as well. So when the kids are responding to her, they're responding in Spanish, and then the father will pipe up and say something, and they'll immediately respond in French. It's amazing. It's great to hear, and they're really sweet, the two little ones. So they're having a bit of a holiday of it, while their dad and his mate look to clear the garden and have a bit of a tidy up. One good thing is he has actually moved a lot of the stuff that was in the front garden. He can't understand why his wife's cousin had thrown all this stuff out, but that's, I suppose, it is what it is with certain people, isn't it? The last day I saw him there, the cousin, he had the right hump about something or other, because I was saying to him, what's the problem? What's the problem? And he said, oh, there's no water, there's no electric, it's cold, da 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 da. I'm going to head back to Paris, because he lives at Créteil, which is southeast of Paris. So things advance, and as you listening to me ramble on, you can obviously see that I'm cracking on. I created a bit of a system also for enabling me to get the tiles. So a great chunk of the tiles now within the loft area. And then what I do is every so often I had an old wardrobe door which I've sort of placed on a level through the bottom Velux window there, so you can just see a bit of it poking out. And what I do is every so often I go round, climb up through into the loft, fill up the door with as many tiles as I can fill up with, and then I return onto the roof and I can access them there. So it's kind of like a Japanese buffet, if you like. I just need it to be ideally on if it was on a conveyor belt, it'd be maybe a bit easier. The stuff would keep turning up, and I could just keep taking them up and laying them. So I normally carry about between 8 and 10 tiles at a time. That's sort of sufficient in one arm, and the other arm I'm using to try and stable myself when I'm climbing up the roof. So the steps are fine when you're going up those, but then obviously you've got to cross over, and it's a question of you keep an eye out and you make sure your foot's going on the batten where it's nailed, because the batten where it's nailed is nailed onto a rafter, so you know that that's your support for your body weight. And I've done this. I did spend several hours sort of doing this. So you take the tiles, you go up, you lay them, and you keep doing that until that wardrobe door is empty of tiles, and then you come back down again. You climb down, you climb back up the telescopic ladder into the loft. You find the next lot of tiles. You scrape them clean if they need cleaning. You stack them on the wardrobe door, and then you return back on the outside, climb up again on the trestle, onto the steps, get the tiles, and lay. And that was my afternoon. And it'll be another few more afternoons of that, or mornings and afternoons, to get this section fully tiled. So it's nice to see cracking on with that. It's nice. It was a great feeling to actually have got to the top there, to get the membrane up and over the top of the roof, so that knowing now that this section, no matter what happens weather-wise, it's at least it's watertight. And it was a wee bit cloudy on this day, and then the sun came out a little bit later, just as I was kind of finishing off the day. So the weather's been ever so kind to me. I haven't had much rain at all, which is good. I mean, I did try and I was hoping that April and May would be fairly dry. You have to allow for the occasional day's rain. And when I returned the beginnings of the second week, I think the day before, because I normally work Tuesday mornings through to Saturday evenings. So when I returned on the Tuesday morning, the roof looked like it had a right old soaking. So obviously Monday night it rained there, but the inside of it was dry. So that's good. What else to say on the roof? I think I'm going to be a good few hundred tiles short on the roof, because every time I go to get the next batch and have a look, there's so many that are broken now. Not just because, not necessarily broken as such, but where the glazing element of it has sort of given way, so the weather's gotten into the bottom part of the tile and eaten away, and that's obviously particular so on the more ready coloured, softer, the least cooked. I mean, all these tiles have been cooked, but some are cooked longer than others, it seems. And lots of the more red coloured tiles are in a state that it's not worth trying to put them back on and take the risk that they're going to hold, because I don't want to have to climb on this roof again anytime soon. Once it's finished, it's done, and I'll be moving on to other things, like putting in the staircase, like creating the vaulted ceiling in the kitchen, do my first fix electrics, do my first fix plumbing, sorting out the bedroom areas in what is currently the loft to make this new first floor area. So there's plenty to be doing without having to then return back on work I've already done. So I will be happy to buy a couple of 300 tiles from anybody local who's selling them. There's quite a few on the site of the Boncoin, which is one of my favourite sites. And they've got anything and everything on there that you would ever wish to buy. And they're ranging in price, anything from 20 centime to 30 centime, which isn't much money at all, but 25 pence a tile. And with that, at least I'll be able to pick out the ones that I want and know that, like I say, once they're laid in place, I haven't got any issues with further degradation to the tiles. And I'll have to do the same thing with the ridge tiles, because there are a number of the ridge tiles which are just completely knackered. They've got holes in it, or again, the glazing has gone. And obviously, ridge tile takes possibly more of a battering than the tiles do, because ridge tiles are a bigger section. They're sitting up on top of the roof, completely exposed. The tiles are partially 2/3 covered normally, so you're only seeing the bottom third of the tile, and that's the bit that takes all the beating. With the ridge tiles, it's the entire ridge tile that takes the beating. So it's something that needs to be replaced. Anyway, as ever, thanks ever so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed my ramblings, and I look forward to speaking to you again on the next one.